I never imagined that love could be so confusing. When I met my husband, everything seemed so simple, so clear, or at least I wanted it to be. The connection between us was instant, and what started as something small, a casual encounter, soon turned into a solid relationship, full of promises and dreams. But like every love story, we also went through our ups and downs. What I didn't know was that the biggest challenge of all was coming, and it wasn't something I could foresee. Life has a strange way of testing us. No matter how deeply I loved him, no matter how much he was the man of my dreams, there was a part of me that felt something was missing. No, it wasn't him. It was me. I found myself at a crossroads. Keep being the devoted wife, or allow myself to be the woman I had always dreamed of being, a woman with her own achievements, her career, her identity. Maybe this wouldn't make sense to many, but for me at that moment, it was the only path I could follow. And then, in a moment of both weakness and strength, I made the decision that would change everything. I asked for time, a temporary separation, just so I could breathe, find myself. I thought that maybe space was what we needed. I was so sure that the love between us was strong enough to withstand it. But I didn't know that such a simple decision would trigger something I couldn't control. And what happened next? Well, that's what I want to share with you today. You'll understand why I made that decision and what happened when he tried to come back. But before I continue, I need to ask something. If you're interested in hearing what happened, what really went down in the days that followed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I'm sure this story will touch you in ways you can't imagine. I looked at him, his eyes, and something inside me broke. We were there in our living room, just like always, but at the same time, everything felt different. I knew that the decision I was about to make wouldn't be simple, and that it would change everything. His breathing was heavy, as if he was waiting for me to say something that he could do to make everything right again. But in reality, I already knew what I was going to say. And still, when the words came out of my mouth, a lump formed in my throat. I think we need some time, a separation. Those words, which seemed so easy to say, now felt like an unbearable weight. He stared at me, not understanding, as if trying to find an explanation in my eyes. But what I really wanted to say was, I need space. I need to find out who I am without you by my side. And instead of feeling relieved, I just felt more distant from myself. He stayed silent for what felt like an eternity. I could see his pain growing. He was never one to hide how he felt. He was completely open, vulnerable, and I felt guilty for being there, doing this to him. But at the same time, something inside me was screaming that I needed to. I needed to find my own identity, my own dreams, my own goals. I couldn't be just his wife anymore. I had to be the woman I always knew I could be. And for that, time alone was necessary. He couldn't understand. And in a way, I didn't expect him to. How can you understand something you've never felt? How can you accept that the person you love so much needs something you can't give? He started talking, trying to convince me, showing me how much our life together was still worth fighting for. But I was so lost in my own thoughts, in my need to find myself, that I couldn't hear anything other than my own inner voice begging for freedom. I didn't want to hurt him, but I knew the only way to do that was by being honest. I needed that separation to find myself. And then he asked me to come back. 3 days later, he came looking for me. He was desperate, frustrated, hurt, but above all, he wanted me back. I can't live without you, he said. I could see the pain on his face, and in a way, it hurt me even more. Because yes, I loved him deeply. I loved him like I'd never loved anyone. But something inside me was still holding me back from giving in, from going back. I thought, with all my being, if that separation had really been necessary. He wanted me back, and I wanted him too. But then, a feeling of guilt took over me. Was I being selfish? Was I doing the right thing? Or was he the only one who really knew what he wanted? I was torn, lost in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I know that many of you, hearing this part of my story, might be wondering what you would do if you were in my place. Would you give in to his request, even knowing that you still needed time? Would you do what I did, or something different? Personally, I still ask myself every day if I made the right choice. But either way, what I know is that the pain I felt when making this decision when seeing him leave was immense. He loved me. I knew that. But the love we felt for each other wasn't enough for me to stop seeking my own identity. I'd really love to know what you think about this. Have you been through something similar? What would you do if you were in my place? I really feel that this dilemma is a choice between following the heart or following what we need to become who we truly are. If you can, share your stories in the comments. I'd really love to know how each of you would handle a situation like this. He didn't give up on me, but it was hard. The love he felt was strong enough to withstand those 3 days of separation, but the question that stayed in my head was, how far can love go when it meets the need for personal growth? I knew I needed that answer to move forward, but I wasn't ready to face the truth that was unfolding before me. When I told him I needed space, I thought I was prepared for anything. I imagined that maybe he would be upset, or angry even, but I never expected to see the look in his eyes, the one of pure devastation. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, looking at me as if I had just torn his world apart. His silence was deafening, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt wash over me. I wanted to reach out and tell him that everything would be okay, that this was just temporary, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Deep down, I knew that this wasn't just a temporary situation. It was the beginning of a shift in our lives, one that we couldn't undo. He spoke after a long pause, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand," he said. "I don't understand how we got here. How we went from being so close to this." His words stung, not because they were meant to hurt, but because they were full of confusion and sadness. I had never seen him so vulnerable, so exposed. And in that moment, I realized how much this decision was going to cost both of us. It wasn't just a matter of needing time. It was a matter of redefining who we were as individuals and as a couple. And I wasn't sure we could come back from that. He begged me to reconsider, to think about what we had built together, the love we shared. "We can work through this," he said, his voice cracking. "I'll give you all the time you need. Just don't walk away from me." I saw the desperation in his eyes, and it broke me. The man I had once thought was so strong was now pleading with me, almost as if he were begging for his life. I wanted to reach out, to hold him and tell him it would be okay, but I couldn't. I had already made up my mind. I had already decided that I needed this space, and despite the love I still felt for him, I couldn't take it back. He continued to argue, his words growing more desperate as he tried to make me see that we could work it out. But the more he spoke, the more I felt a sense of clarity. I realized that the love we had wasn't enough to fill the void I felt inside. It wasn't enough to quiet the voice inside my head telling me that I needed to be more than just his wife. I needed to be me, and for that, I had to go on this journey alone. I saw the change in him as the days went by. At first, he was in denial, trying to convince me to come back, to reconsider my decision. But eventually, the weight of the situation started to sink in for him. I could see it in his eyes. He was hurt, but he was also beginning to accept the reality of what was happening. He wasn't going to fight me anymore. The love he had for me was still there, but the strength of our relationship wasn't enough to overcome the space I needed to grow. We both were left standing at the edge of something we couldn't undo, a chapter in our lives that had been written, but now we had to face the consequences of our choices. I watched him walk away, knowing that the future was uncertain for both of us. Would he wait for me? Would he move on? I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't control the outcome of our love. I could only control my own path, my own future, and I had to keep moving forward. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But sometimes you have to make the hardest decisions in order to find out who you truly are. The love I had for him didn't go away, but I knew that without taking this time to focus on myself, I would never be able to give him the version of me that he deserved. And maybe, just maybe, this time apart would allow us both to become the people we were meant to be, with or without each other. It didn't take long before he came to me again. Only 3 days had passed, but it felt like an eternity. 3 days apart, and yet, he couldn't stay away. I could see it in his eyes the moment he showed up at my door, a mixture of exhaustion, hope, and desperation. He had been trying to hold on, to push through, but I knew better now. The reality was sinking in for him just as it had for me. He didn't want to lose me, not now, not like this. I could see the pain written all over his face, a kind of raw vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. He came to me, and his first words were a quiet plea. I can't do this. I can't be without you. Those words hit me like a wave, pulling me under with their weight. I stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to do. He had always been the strong one, the steady force in our relationship. But now, he was standing in front of me, broken, asking for something I wasn't sure I could give him anymore. The truth was, part of me still wanted him. Part of me still longed for the life we had shared, the comfort and stability we had built together. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for so long, was finally speaking up. It was telling me that I couldn't go back. Not yet. I wasn't ready. I'm sorry, I whispered, the words feeling so inadequate, so empty. I can't just go back, not like this. I need time. I need to focus on me. His eyes searched mine, looking for some sign of hope, something that could reassure him that we could go back to how things were. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if we ever could. We had crossed a line now, and as much as I loved him, I knew that love wasn't enough to fix everything. It wasn't enough to ignore the fact that I had spent so many years living for both of us, forgetting about the woman I had once been. You're asking me to wait, he said, his voice barely audible, as if the very words were too heavy to bear. You want me to wait while you figure things out. And I love you enough to do that, but I can't keep waiting. I need to know that there's a future for us, that you're not just pushing me away forever. His words were sharp, and they stung. They made me question everything I had believed in during those few days apart. Was I being too selfish? Was I asking too much of him? I didn't want to let go, not really, but I didn't know how to reconcile our love with my need for independence. I don't know what the future holds, I replied, feeling the weight of my words sink in. But I do know that right now, I need to find myself. I need to be the person I was before we became. The silence that followed felt deafening. He didn't speak for a long time, just standing there looking at me like he was trying to understand what I was saying, what I was feeling. I knew he was struggling with my decision, and I could see the conflict inside him. On one hand, he loved me, and he would do anything to keep me. On the other hand, he didn't know how much longer he could wait for me to figure things out. I can't promise that I'll wait forever, he said, finally breaking the silence. But I will wait for as long as I can. And with that, he left. Just like that, he was gone again. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know if I should be relieved or guilty. Part of me was relieved that he was giving me the space I needed, but another part of me felt like I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. As the days went on, I couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. I couldn't stop wondering if I had made the right choice, if I had been too quick to push him away. He loved me enough to wait. He loved me enough to give me time to figure things out, even though it hurt him. And here I was, asking him to wait for me, while I tried to become someone I had lost sight of. It wasn't fair. And yet, it was the only way I knew how to move forward. The love I felt for him was undeniable. It was real. But I also knew that I couldn't be the woman he needed me to be if I didn't take this time for myself. I wasn't just asking for space to figure out what I wanted. I was asking for the chance to rediscover who I was without the constant influence of the person I had become in our relationship. I needed to learn how to be me again, without any expectations or pressure. But as I sat alone in our home, I couldn't help but wonder if love alone was enough to hold us together. Would waiting for me to find myself be enough for him? Would the love we had shared survive the distance I was creating? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But I knew one thing. I couldn't go back. Not yet. The days after his visit felt like a blur, a fog of confusion and doubt. He had left, but the tension in the air didn't leave with him. I could still feel him here, in the house, in my thoughts, in my heart. It wasn't easy, not by any means. Part of me wanted to run to him, to embrace him, to tell him everything would be okay, and that we could get back to what we had. But I knew I couldn't. I knew that if I did that, I would be sacrificing something more important than just our relationship. I'd be sacrificing myself. I had to make a decision, and it wasn't going to be easy. I had to choose between what my heart wanted and what my soul needed. I couldn't pretend anymore that I could be everything for him and nothing for myself. It wasn't fair to either of us. So, I made the decision to stand firm, even though every inch of me ached to go back to the comfort of his arms. I couldn't be the woman he needed unless I became the woman I needed first. That was the truth. The hardest truth I had ever faced. I needed time, and I needed to be alone. The guilt was overwhelming, but it was also clear. The clarity was painful. The decision felt like cutting through my own heart, but I had to do it. I had to protect myself, even if it meant breaking both of us. It wasn't just about love. It was about rediscovering myself, finding the pieces of me that had been lost in the years of being a partner, of being someone's other half. I wasn't his half. I was a whole person in my own right. And I needed to remember that. I needed to remember who I was before I became someone's everything. So, I sent him a message. A simple text, but one that held the weight of everything I couldn't say in person. I need you to stop waiting for me. I can't be with you right now. I need to be alone. Please, understand that I love you, but I have to do this. I hit send and immediately regretted it. My heart raced as I waited for him to respond, but I knew it was the right thing to do. As soon as he replied, my heart shattered. He said he understood, but the words were hollow, lacking the conviction they once had. I could feel the distance between us growing. The emotional chasm that had been slowly widening now became impossible to ignore. He didn't respond with anger or frustration.
No, he was too kind for that.
But the sadness in his reply, the quiet acceptance of what I was asking, was the hardest thing I'd ever had to read. It was like reading the death of our relationship in real time. But it had to happen. It had to be this way. I couldn't keep pretending that I was the person he wanted me to be, that I could give him everything when I had nothing left to give. I couldn't keep living a life that wasn't mine, a life that was only partly mine. I couldn't keep holding on to something that wasn't truly whole. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And yet, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I was doing something for myself, something that, in the long run, would make me stronger. It wouldn't be easy. It would hurt. A lot. But I was finally choosing me. I wasn't sure what would happen to us, whether we'd find our way back to each other or not. But I knew that no matter what, I had to walk this path alone for a while. I had to find myself before I could ever give him or anyone else what they needed. But deep down, I also knew that the future wasn't as clear as I hoped it would be. I didn't know how long this separation would last. I didn't know if it would be permanent. But I had to let go, at least for now. I had to face the unknown with courage, because the unknown was better than the life I had been living in the shadows of someone else's expectations. I was taking a risk, a huge risk, and yet, I knew that if I didn't take it, I would never truly be free. So, I stood there, looking at the empty space where he used to be, and I made peace with the decision I had just made. I didn't know if he would ever forgive me, but I knew I had to forgive myself first. The days after my decision were some of the hardest I've ever faced. I had made a choice that was meant to bring me clarity and strength, but all I felt was emptiness. The house felt too quiet without him, and the silence was deafening. I had asked for space, but the space I thought I needed was beginning to feel like a vast, lonely void. I thought that by making this decision, I would feel a sense of liberation, that I would finally be free to pursue my own path, to rediscover the parts of me that had been buried for so long. But instead, I found myself drowning in the weight of regret and doubt. I missed him. I missed the way he would laugh, the way he would hold me, the way we used to talk about our dreams. Everything about him had been a part of me for so long that now, without him, I felt like a part of me was missing. But that feeling wasn't enough to make me reconsider. I had made my decision, and deep down, I knew it was the right one. The thing was, right didn't always feel good. Right didn't always feel comfortable. Right was painful, and it tore at my soul in ways I hadn't anticipated. I spent my days lost in thought, questioning everything I had done. Had I been selfish? Had I destroyed something beautiful by trying to find myself? The guilt weighed heavily on me, like a shadow that followed me wherever I went. I couldn't escape it. And the worst part was I didn't know if there was a way back. I didn't know if this separation would be the thing that eventually brought us back together, or the thing that tore us apart forever. I kept telling myself that this was just temporary, that I would figure it out and come back to him when I was ready. But how long could he wait? How long could I ask him to stay on the sidelines while I figured out who I was without him? And was it even fair to expect him to do that? I didn't have answers. And the more I tried to find answers, the more I realized how little I actually knew about myself. I had spent so much of my life being someone's partner, being the woman in the relationship, that I didn't know how to be just me. It was a strange and painful feeling to be alone in my own life. I had been surrounded by people, by him, for so long that I had lost sight of the person I used to be, the person I had once dreamed of becoming. And now I was trying to rebuild that person from scratch, trying to figure out who she was and what she wanted. It wasn't easy.
It was exhausting.
It was lonely. And I began to wonder if I had made the right decision after all. The loneliness was starting to eat away at me, making me second-guess everything I thought I knew about myself. I hadn't expected it to be this hard. I hadn't expected to feel so lost, so disconnected from everything I had once known. But as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't go back. Not yet. I had to keep moving forward, no matter how much it hurt. The hardest part was the realization that I wasn't just grieving the loss of him. I was grieving the loss of the life we had built, the person I used to be, the dreams I had let go of in favor of being with him. And now, all of that was gone. It felt like I was mourning the death of an identity that no longer existed, and in its place was this new version of me, someone who was still figuring things out, still trying to understand who she was. I didn't know how long this process would take, or if I would ever truly find the answers I was looking for. But I knew that I couldn't keep living in the past, clinging to what we had. I had to let go of the old me to make space for the new one. The pain was inevitable, but it was also necessary. It was a part of the process. And though I didn't have all the answers, I knew that this journey, as difficult and painful as it was one I had to take alone. And that was the hardest part of all. As the weeks went by, I began to feel a shift within myself, a subtle change that wasn't easy to accept. The first few days without him felt like a blur of numbness, as if I were walking through life in a fog. But slowly, the fog started to lift, and with it came a realization.
It wasn't just about him.
It wasn't just about us.
It was about me.
I was starting to find pieces of myself that had been buried for so long. It wasn't easy. No part of this journey had been easy, but it was necessary. I had to come to terms with the fact that I had spent so much of my life trying to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be that I had forgotten who I truly was. The person I had been before all of this, before we became we. The woman who had dreams and ambitions, the woman who had a life outside of our relationship. I wasn't just someone's partner. I was an individual with my own identity, my own needs. I had spent so many years supporting him, being there for him, that I had lost sight of my own desires. I had sacrificed parts of myself, convinced that love would be enough to fill the emptiness I sometimes felt. But love wasn't enough. Not when I wasn't whole. Not when I hadn't taken the time to care for myself first. It was a hard truth to face, but it was the truth. And I couldn't ignore it any longer. It wasn't that I didn't love him, I did. I loved him with every fiber of my being. But I also loved myself, and I had to learn to love myself in a way I had never done before. I couldn't keep pouring myself into someone else without taking care of what was left of me. And for the first time in a long time, I was starting to feel like I was reclaiming my life, one small step at a time. But even with this newfound clarity, the journey wasn't easy. There were days when I missed him terribly. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, when I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. I would replay our conversations, our moments together, and wonder if things could have been different. Could I have made a different choice? Could I have found a way to make it work? The doubt would creep in, but I would remind myself of why I had done this in the first place. I had made the decision to separate because I needed to find myself again. I needed to rediscover the woman I had been before. And as hard as it was, I couldn't turn back. I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let the fear of regret control me. And as time passed, I began to see changes within myself. I started to believe in my own strength again. I started to believe that I could be whole, that I could have both love and independence, that I could be my own person and still love deeply. And in that process, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was what we both needed to grow, to become the individuals we were always meant to be before we could truly be together again. But the hardest part of all of this was learning to live with the decision. I had chosen this path, and now I had to walk it, no matter how painful it was. The uncertainty of the future still loomed large, and I didn't know what would happen to us. Would we find our way back to each other? Would the love we shared survive this time apart? I didn't know. But what I did know was that I couldn't let fear control me. I had to embrace the unknown and trust that, in time, things would become clearer. If you've been following this story, if these words have resonated with you in any way, I invite you to stay with us. By subscribing to the channel, you're helping keep these powerful stories alive. They are stories of love, loss, and the strength we find within ourselves, even in the darkest moments. Please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads like this? What did you do? How did you move forward? Your voice matters. It's important for us to preserve these stories, to give a voice to those who've walked through pain and emerged stronger. If you've ever felt lost, if you've ever questioned your decisions, this space is for you. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to check out the other videos in our playlist. The link will be in the description or in the pinned comments below. Let's continue this journey together.